Wow, what an episode. We finally got one of the biggest answers to one of the biggest Star Wars mysteries. Um, before we begin, spoilers for the Foundling episode directed by Carl Weathers. So, spoilers and full of answers, huge spoilers for this show. I just invited everyone back on. Hopefully, they rejoin. Um, incredible. I mean, I've said before that I love The Mandalorian. It's probably my most favorite thing right now in Star Wars, and they delivered. I mean, we had so many predictions on, like I said, this is heavy spoilers for The Foundling. So if you haven't watched the show, don't watch this reaction show because we're going to talk all about the episode. And I should have a lot of people joining in relatively shortly here. So, yeah, I think we talked about it previously. Who would save Grogu? And when they mentioned the name, I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's Kelleran. I know who that is. I just couldn't place who Kelleran was." And I was like, "It's someone I know. I just couldn't place it." And then, man, it was so fantastic to get Ahmed Best back in Star Wars. So great.
They redeemed him.
And people were joking, "Oh, it's going to be Jar Jar Binks saving him," but I mean, technically, I mean,
From a certain point of view.
yeah, exactly, from a certain point of view. So, what is up, Liam? That was good. Mecca, all the hype with Grogu Rescue was a new guy. So, I think a few episodes ago, I actually said it'd be cool to see Ahmed Best show up as his Jedi character. And Liam said he thought it was Mace for a second. Yeah, it wasn't. It was Jedi Master Kelleran.
Now, who is Kelleran?
So Ahmed Best hosted a game show on YouTube TV for kids. It was a Jedi game show, and they gave him an official character. He was dressed up as a Jedi, and they gave him the robes, the lightsabers, the name, and we mentioned it on a podcast a few podcasts ago that would be a pretty cool reveal. And now Ahmed Best has a really important role to play, and hopefully they didn't show the conclusion of where they landed after they made the jump to hyperspace. So where are they going? They going back to Naboo? The big like rumor and talk is maybe we get to see Naboo again in the show. So yeah, it's amazing. We finally got our answer. It's Ahmed Best that saved Grogu.
Yeah, I thought the sequence, just the way it was filmed, I thought it was a little underwhelming for that sequence. I thought that the episode, I don't know, I was a little bit worried in the start. I was like, oh, I don't know. And then it picked up, and then I really liked the idea of like it being in the nest, and it kind of reminded me like an old Harryhausen film.
Right, right. I was thinking like Land of the Lost type type thing.
Exactly, something like
Saturday
that.
morning, yeah.
And so I really liked that. But at the beginning, I was like, oh. I was like, I just felt like it was maybe the way it was shot, but it felt a little underwhelming with the Grogu escape for me. It didn't feel, I don't know, tense enough or something. It was just, I don't know. I thought it was going to be better. I thought Anakin was going to be coming through the door. That would have been a cooler. It was.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh my gosh, are we getting Anakin right now? His Hayden Christensen walking through that door." But no. But I mean, the cool thing is Ahmed Best. We've been clamoring for Ahmed Best to somehow come back to Star Wars, and for him to be like a really cool Jedi, like a dual lightsaber wielding Jedi, green and blue, and to show off some moves. And Ahmed Best is going to be the talk of the Star Wars world here for the next week or two.
Yeah, I thought it was cool, but I honestly would have. I don't know.
What is up, Chuck J? Thank you for joining the
Yeah,
podcast.
you pick a name, buddy. You're Chuck or you're Carl. Enough of this nonsense. You're not a Sith Lord. You don't get two names.
I get as many names as I want.
I got a name for you. Hold on, let me mute the camera.
So yes, everyone, this is Carl, and he will be traveling to London with me. And
Says Chuck
we'll,
J.
yeah, he goes by many names. Actually, that's not even the actual name he goes by. I'm one of the few people that call him Carl. But anyways, the episode, Chuck J. What did you think?
What did I think? Well, I kind of like that they're using this to stay in the Mandalorian storyline instead of just kind of introducing more member berries into the mix. Like that whole temple scene was cool without using any like, okay, well, here's XYZ character that we already know. So I like that. Say I like that they're focusing on you. This is Mandalorian, not what came before. So it's a good way to go. I think that's what they should have just stuck to the from the very beginning, anyways. By instead of continuously entering, okay, this is the old trilogy. This is the old trilogy. Remember this? Uh, I get that everybody likes the old stuff. That's why we're all here, right? But it's time to tell new stories, and I think they're finally trying to do that, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I really like the whole kind of running it back into, because the big question was, how were they going to reintroduce the story of Order 66? We all saw the images in the trailers, um, and Grogu kind of did have kind of like a PTSD type of thing, and he had a flashback, and we finally got that big answer. I think people are just going to be focused. I'm like just solely focused right now on the fact that we have Ahmed Best back, because I mean on the podcast we've been asking for him to come back. He has a Jedi. He is a Jedi in canon, and they did it. They brought him back. It wasn't Mace Windu. It was Ahmed Best, which is
It was
is
Mace
terrific.
Windu from Wish.
I thought he did a pretty good acting job. He looked pretty decent as a Jedi. He's pretty fit. Hopefully he's in London with us at Celebration. So
When I saw it, I was like, "Who is this? I can't picture who this is," and it took me a minute.
Oh, you didn't realize that was Jar Jar Binks?
I did not.
yeah.
I did not. I had blocked that out of my memory.
Yeah, yeah. When I saw it, it made me happy just because of all the hate that man's been getting over the years.
Yeah.
To put him himself, in Star Wars is a good thing. And are we ever going to see him again? No, but that doesn't matter. I mean,
We'll probably see him one more time.
maybe. Yeah, I mean, there might be another flashback scene that they do to show where they went to.
Yeah.
Because all they showed was okay, they left Coruscant, where'd they go?
Yeah.
Because in the show, all they say is it's ready to go. Well, it's ready to go where? I mean, so there is that.
Yeah, and the fact that Bo-Katan told the armor that she admitted she saw Mythosaur in real life, and the armor's reaction was just, "This is the way." So, do you think the armor actually thought that she saw an actual Mythosaur, or was she just like maybe hallucinating or saw some type of vision in the living waters? I mean, what do you guys make
No,
of the armor's reaction?
I think she believed her. I think she didn't believe her at first until she made it clear, and then I think she was like, "All right, this is the way."
I
I think she
don't
believed
know,
her.
man.
Well, I think that character has kind of been more of the okay, that's great, show me kind of attitude to everything. Like the same thing with Din. Every time he tells her something, she's like, "Oh yeah, that's great. Just go ahead and do it, and then we'll see where you're at." Yeah, just like when he told her the planet wasn't poison and all that stuff, she's still like, "Okay, from all I know, that's not true, but go ahead and find out." Uh, so I think this is the same attitude you see here. It's kind of a okay, yeah, that's great that you think you saw that. I don't think you did, but if you can prove it, I'm all for it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Her voice inflection was the same as it always is. So
right,
Yeah.
it's a very matter of factish kind of character. It's like, look, this is how things are. This is the way, kind of, obviously, but if you can prove otherwise, okay, show me. So That's kind of been the attitude of that character in my view, anyways.
Yeah, for me,
I think she believed her. I think she didn't at first, but then I think she did. But I mean, we'll see. I don't
yeah,
think it's
look
going
at
to be too pertinent to how the story goes. I mean, it won't be too hard for her to prove.
yeah, but we're I think as far as like I think we're still a little unclear if you have the dark saber and then a different person has the mythosaur, does the mythosaur really trump the person that has the dark saber? You know, it's kind of one of those interesting kind
I
of
don't know.
questions that I mean, if we even get to that point, but it's very kind of odd to me that Bo-Katan revealed that she saw the mythosaur. I mean, it feels a little too early, but I think the season has kind of has given us things that have happened earlier than I think we all expected. So it's kind of par for the course, really. But um, Bo-Katan seems like she's more on the lighter side of things now. I thought she was going to be kind of the main protagonist of the season, aside from the typical like Moff Gideon Empire character. But it's interesting the way that her character is progressing. I don't know. It's very
The
much
pay,
kind of subverting
yeah.
my expectations.
You know, I couldn't help but think about the pacing felt a little bit off for this episode. And it also, like when they took the kid, it felt like they're taking their sweet time to get to rescue this kid in a way. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it was
Well,
I had a little bit of a problem with that as well because I'm like, okay, so this creature's dragging off this kid for what other purpose other than to feed its young, right? Because it's taking it to a nest. So why is it carrying around the kid in its stomach for extended period of time? I mean that because that's essentially what they were saying, right? The kid was inside the big creature, so she just regurgitated the kid, and then like, okay, well, huh? Then and then also there's a little bit of a problem there because so Dim uses his heat vision. He's like, there's a heat signature over there, but there's only one. But there's three creatures that pop out. So I'm like, what? You didn't see the other two?
yeah.
There are
Some
a couple of inconsistencies there where I'm like, well, that doesn't really jive, but okay.
sometimes
Uh,
those things really irk me. That it's like, aren't they thinking those things through logically, like in the real world? Like shouldn't there should have been like a sense of urgency? They just took this kid and flew away, and they're like, let's camp out overnight. We'll go in the morning. We'll be well rested. You know, it's like
yeah,
if that was your kid, if that was your kid, wouldn't you be like, we are going up this fucking mountain right now?
well, especially since that's the attitude that they portray at the back end when they're like, no, hold on a second, and he just runs in there, but he's okay camping for a night before rescuing his son. You know,
That's what I'm saying.
so yeah, the sense of urgency kind of completely changes there towards the back end. You know, the front end, he's just like, yeah, no, we're gonna go save my kid, and then later on, he's like, no, we're gonna rush in. Why are you so urgent now and before you were willing to wait 24 hours? You know, so
Yeah, it just felt odd to me. Like things like that should be really coherent in a story like this.
I agree. It was little awkward. Just like the end of it when they're pulling the you know the baby creatures out. I'm like, where did they fit all these? Because the ship is
that's
not
what I
exactly
thought too.
very big. I'm like, what do they have some sort of magic shrink ray back there that they can shrink them down and re-expand them when they come out? Because one, maybe if they all kind of scooch together in the back, because you don't forget they got all the other Mandalorians in there too. So there's like six adults, a kid, and then three of these creatures packed into this tiny little ship. Well, how does that work?
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's where
These
the
things have to get thought through, I think, a little bit more. I mean, this is Star Wars. People pick
Yeah,
everything apart. You know what I mean?
yeah.
yeah, but I mean the good thing for in the long term, as these are like nitpicks in a way, the story that they were telling on the whole was good. So I'm okay with a couple of well, yeah, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but I'm willing to overlook that for the sake of you have a story. You didn't have time to explain how the transporting of the people is going to work.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, what's up, Ted? What'd you think of the episode?
Gentlemen, I thought it was interesting, but I definitely could have waited till the morning to watch it.
Really?
But yeah, no, but I liked it. They did a lot of interesting things. I'm sure you guys have already talked it to death. It was a short episode, but ultimately it pushes Bo into the top of the short list on people able to take over the group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She has set herself up really well politically amongst Paz Vizsla for one. I mean, he pretty much owes her his life. So yeah, it's I think that's the most interesting part. And of course, seeing Ahmed Best was pretty awesome. Pretty cool nod. I didn't watch the Jedi Temple Challenge,
Yeah.
but I've been on this show and I've said on my show for years that Favreau and Filoni are going to right the wrongs of Star Wars past. And I thought we would see Jar Jar eventually, but seeing Ahmed Best is equally as necessary to give him his due for what he's gone through at the hands of the Star Wars community. So, yeah, pretty cool seeing him on live action form.
Nice. Maddie B, your thoughts?
Mid.
You and Derpy agree, apparently.
It was so mid. And I agree. I'm at best. Keller and Beck. I mean, cool. Give that guy his glory. But this non-impactful Larry character is so crucial of a piece in this that he's the one who saves Grogu from this situation. I expected a Filoni episode to like give me more like key players.
Yeah, we were all thinking Ahsoka Tano was going to show up because of Rosario Dawson's Instagram post or whatever. She said she couldn't wait for today. But I mean, it's kind of interesting that we only got Coruscant and then the shock and surprise of Ahmed Best showing up. But yeah, it seems like everyone thinks it's not that great of an episode.
I mean, I'd say like a 7-ish out of 10.
Yeah, I'm on the 6 train, but I think that like at some point the way that they're thinking about it is different than we are. So like they've had several moments through Book of Boba and Mandalorian that really brought Star Wars fans back. Where it's like bringing back Luke Skywalker, some really killer Ahsoka scenes. But at the end of the day, they're creating a show about Mandalorians, and that's what this episode was, right? So we were all expecting them to save Star Wars again, but their goal wasn't to save Star. It was to just continue an episode about Mandalorians, to add more lore to the Mandalore, right? And keep it going, and they did that. They were successful in that. There were some really cool moments with Bo-Katan, the armorer. There were some cool moments with the armorer and Grogu, right? Really cool stuff there. Everything else, you could kind of just leave it out for me. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think? Did you love it?
I thought to me there wasn't like a sense of urgency with a few things that was frustrating. Like the temple scene, I thought it should have been more intense. It just the way they shot it and he was escaping, it just felt a little bit off action wise for me. And then like the kid getting captured and they like taking their time, like, and that's his son. Like if that was my son, like, you know what I mean? I'm not waiting to the morning to get, and it just didn't quite flow correctly for me. It felt a little off.
I love that dog shake in the background.
That's mine.
Was he shaking his head agreeing? Or
No, he's the dog was trying to shake off the cringe of this episode. It was definitely just okay.
the thing that I liked the most about it was the kind of Ray Harryhausen kind of feel, Clash of the Titans. You know, they're attacking the bird nest. That I think was the highlight of the episode for me.
Right, but then there's that cringe scene, like they take down this flying beast, right,
Mhm.
and they drop it into the water, and it's just such a Kathleen Kennedy Jurassic Park move. It gets eaten by another one,
It's
and
not
then
a Kennedy move. We
no,
talked about it
Yeah, this
5
is a
minutes
Star
ago.
Wars thing, though. There's always a
no,
bigger
there's
fish
always a
there.
bigger fish, but it
The
wasn't.
Qui-Gon. There you go.
It didn't play off like that. And
Oh, I
just
knew
like
it. I knew it the second he dropped.
in,
I
in
knew
Yeah,
it the
another
I
second
kind
he
of
dropped.
fully expected that to be to happen.
in another episode, though, we've gotten a Jurassic Park-esque monster. Was it episode 1? Now we've got another Jurassic Park-esque scene here in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a bigger fish. I mean, we could apply that to anything.
Well, right.
The way that it took place, the visualization of what happened, did not make me think of Qui-Gon at the bottom of the sea in Naboo. It looked like Jurassic Park.
I get it. I totally get it. But Qui-Gon did it first. It's kind of like the Simpsons line. The Simpsons did it first. Well, Qui-Gon did it first.
You know what that actually did do for me and why I didn't mind that is like, because when in episode 1 that same type of creature busts out, I'm like, okay, well, that's great that these guys are living here, but clearly they're not the main food source for a creature that big. So what does this thing eat? So they kind of established some level of biological circle there. It's like if these flying things get in the water, they live off of that stuff like a crocodile would. Anything that gets close to the surface gets eaten. So I was fine with it from that point, especially since they didn't linger on it. They didn't spend any major time. I was just like, hey, let's move on with the story. So I was fine with it. If they had spent more time with it, I would have be more in agreement with you. But since this was just a split second, kind of, there's something bigger living in the water that you already know about. Okay.
I was fine with it getting eaten. That didn't really bother me. There were other things that were kind of more like frustrating for me. Like, I don't know, Grogu's escape felt a little bit underwhelming for me.
Well, I think that
I hate to say
they
it.
almost got too meta with it, right? Like they almost like went too inside and said, "Hey, guess who's going to save them? The actor that played Jar Jar Binks." And it's like, well, that's a little bit too like a deep of a cut. We were actually hoping for like a main player in the story.
Yeah,
Not
I was
to
hoping for
redeem
nobody,
Jar
which
Jar.
is what they went with. So, like, I know everybody wanted to see like big already introduced character. I was hoping they would do nobody, and
That's
which is
interesting.
exactly what they went with. It's like, look, it doesn't always have to be a superstar that saves the day. It can be anybody in the Star Wars universe. In this case, it was a minor guy. He was Jedi, obviously, so he has a name, he has a story. Are we ever going to find out who that actually was? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't really matter. It's
He's
just
a game show host. We know who he is.
so.
As a joke, as a joke, as a joke.
But like I said, like we were saying earlier, there's probably going to be one more episode where they're gonna do one more flashback to show what the destination is that they're going to, because they're showing it getting into hyperspace and that's it. But and you might get your big character in that because it might be like an assembly point for Jedi. So you might get your slideshow of look at all these famous Jedi at that point. But I think it's better to kind of decouple from all that and tell your own story, which is what they did here, and I appreciate them doing that. I don't want any more. Remember these other stories that in the show lives on the shoulders of that. I don't want to see any more of that. I'm good without.
I'm okay with us not getting more Grogu flashbacks. I mean, I think anything that we've seen has been traumatic experiences that he's had. So him getting out of the temple now, like, is there any more trauma that he might have experienced? he gets
Probably
captured
not.
eventually, so we might maybe see that. But I don't think it's not a mystery that I need answered how he got captured in the first place. I
Right.
think that this episode kind of adds more anticipation for what's coming. You've been setting up plots along the way, and you're really trying to sell this plot line on us. So it there has to be a payoff here
It's
that
gonna
is
come to a point where
going to be big.
it's gonna come to a point where Bo-Katan is gonna try to tame the Mythosaur, isn't able to do it. Din Djarin tries to help her. Din Djarin can't help her do it, and Grogu has to tame the Mythosaur. Because he has the beast taming abilities, and they've shown us that in previous seasons. And if that's what it turns into, then fine. But I'm not okay with anybody in the story gets to be a part of it. Like there's key players in this moment. If we go back to episode 3, Order 66, there's key players involved here. And very important characters and storylines that we're left out of, where there's holes that need to be filled a little bit for us. And that's why we love Tales of the Jedi so much. That's why we loved some of these other things, because they filled in a little bit of these holes we've been hounding on. And just I felt like they just brought on my best Kelleran back to like right the Jar Jar wrong of the prequels, but it didn't serve well here. I don't think. I think it could have been, somebody we know about. It could have been a little
Yeah,
bit
I
deeper
I
than
was
that.
disappointed. To me, it was just underwhelming. And you know what? I would have been fine if it was a nobody, had the action felt more intense and more, I don't know, it just didn't feel too intense. It just felt like, I don't know, I felt a little disconnected watching it. I don't know what it was.
The action felt very TV show. It wasn't movie action. That's what it was. Kind of hurts that, because that particular scene, that Order 66 scene at the temple, we've only seen in movie form, where there's thousands of clone troopers running in there, and now, like for instance, when they first bust through the door, there's 4 of them. There's 4 Jedi, and 4 clone troopers win against 4 Jedi. How does that happen?
The least accurate, other than stormtroopers, like 4 like they cannot take down 4 Jedi. There's no way.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things, but again, budgetary constraints here. You can't to do what actually should have been on screen would have blown the entire budget for the entire season. So
1 Jedi, 2 lightsabers. You're lucky if 20 stormtroopers could take them down.
right,
Or
and actually,
clone troopers,
that part of it, when they're getting on the bike, that felt a lot more to scale, because there were a lot more clone troopers, and it's 1 Jedi versus a whole bunch of clone troopers. That makes sense, because he made dispatch them like they're nothing, like it's supposed to be. They're cannon fodder. But I had a problem with the first 4 that bust through the door, and all of a sudden they're killing 2 right off the bat. It's like,
Yeah.
who are these chums? Like,
Yeah.
just lucky shots right off the bat.
Yeah.
right. Well, that's what I'm saying.
way.
It's like the clone trooper, the 4 clone troopers should just, you should have had a whole bunch of them pile up in the doorway, kind of like,
Exactly.
I mean, Han and Luke on the Death Star do that to them when they're coming out of the elevator.
But also,
there's a
you
couple
have
of
you have
photos.
4 master Jedis, right?
Mhm.
They
Well, we
could've-
don't know if they're
they could-
masters. They could still be apprentices.
Well, the
but
4 of them,
still.
they could have crunched them into a soda can.
Yeah,
Except that they got through the door.
something should have happened there. You should have shown. Yeah, but again, you're looking at it from a budgetary, point of view. It's like you can only put so many clones in before it starts become an issue. Now, I think it would have been better to show a quick cut of the 4 coming out, and then cutting to a different angle of it all, and just like doing the front of the Jedi and just showing a bunch of blaster bolts, and then eventually some of them get hit and fall. That would have been visually a little bit more.
Or you brought in Hayden Christensen. He's breaking through the door, and he has orders from Palpatine to kill everyone in the temple except for this youngling. And Anakin takes him. I mean, like there's so many ways they could have went with this that would have been way more felt by the community.
Right,
Yes.
but if
And
you but
It's
if
like
you do that, then it stops being the Mandalorian, and now it becomes the Vader show. And I think the whole point is to get away from the Vader show and to start telling stories that are what they're supposed to be.
but they could have left that there,
Mandalorian.
right? So they brought in Luke, right?
Yeah,
So
which
like,
was a mistake in my view, but
but
that was a
it didn't turn the
turn off
Mandalorian
his
into
mic.
the Luke. It didn't turn the Mandalorian.
We can
It
kick
didn't
him,
turn
right?
it into the Luke show. So
well,
like the
that's because
Mandalorian
they
didn't become the
reversed
Luke
that out
show.
immediately in Book of Boba Fett. They did the final episode of season 2, and then they immediately, oh crap! Now we created the Luke show. Let's reverse that out as quickly as we can.
But
For
we
sure,
want
but
the Luke show.
But we're still in the Mandalorian universe. So like that one moment, I don't think would have turned it into the Vader show. Like it would have just been
Because Vader was there in that moment, so it makes sense.
and
Well,
like
I mean, that
you know,
was Vader's moment to be slaughtering everybody in the temple. I mean, there's
if
really
if we're getting a Order 66 flashback, it's not the actor who played Jar Jar Binks and some no-name Jedi that we expect to pull this very important character out of this scene. Like it's just not.
nobody's
loved
going
it.
to be talking about how great that scene was. How, oh my God, I can't believe what happened with Grogu. After today, it's going to be like,
No, the
It was
internet
so-
is going to be on fire.
And I think that was the point. I think the
Yeah.
point was to take away the focus of, oh, look at how it is. I think the point was, this is the Mandalorian, and Grogu is going to be a Mandalorian, not a Jedi. That's what he chose. That's what
Or-
the storyline is.
or
So-
both. So like Tar Vizsla. So he might be both.
Well, he might obviously he has Force powers, but I don't think he's ever going to be a Jedi. He's never going to follow any of those creeds. He's not ever going to develop any of those skills because that's not what he does. I think
Well,
the
also
point
the
is-
sequel trilogy killed that, right? So there is no more Jedis or Siths or anything. So the
Well,
sequel
exactly.
trilogy already set it up that there's no wrong anymore. It's just you just are, and you try to help, things, and so they're kind of setting it up in that way. But I don't know. I did love the scene where the Mando looked over at Grogu and said, "Hey, you know how to do this, buddy. You got this." When he's fighting the kid, and then Grogu flips over his head like 3 times with the Force, and then shoots him 3 times right there in the chest. I think we're going to be set up for a very gray Jedi-esque Grogu in like Mando. So the armorer putting that crest on him.
Right. I also wouldn't be surprised if we see the Bendu in this show at some point, to be quite honest, because it seems like that would be a very Filoni thing to do the neutral Force user and say, hey, look, I've introduced this once before. This still exists. Let's go with that. So a character like that, I wouldn't be surprised if we get to see that in the Mandalorian down the line, because that's been part of Rebels.
Well, and there is no real true Jedi or Sith at this point. So like,
Right.
so like Ahsoka's gray. Luke, we know where he's at in the Mando, we don't know quite for sure, but we know where he ends up based on the sequel trilogy. So we know he ends up gray. So there really is no Jedi Order per se, and nobody who's a Force user at this point you can like put into those categories. They've kind of taken that out of it, which is kind of weird, right?
Well, I think it's purposeful, but yeah. I think there needs to be a reestablishment of some sort of level of Force user type thing. And removing the Jedi concept out of it and coming up with something new is probably a good idea. Because the storyline has been the Jedi failed. That didn't work. Yeah, it worked for a while, but it didn't work long term. So something new has to be introduced. So I think that's might be kind of the overall point of all this, is to continue to say the Jedi didn't work, neither did the Sith. So let's come up with something else.
For sure. But if you get too gray, right? So if you get so gray that there's no way to determine bad or good,
Well,
then,
but
then
I think
how do you set up adversaries?
Well, I think what you're going to see, going to see, because you have very, very few, like, storyline wise, very few Force users in the game at this point, right? I think you're going to see a separation again, like you always would, because you're always going to get that one person that's not going to follow the gray line. You're going to have that either wants to be super good, or you're going to, on the flip side, you're going to have somebody that, hey, you can use this for negative stuff, and negative is easier, so why not do that? So yeah, I don't think you're gonna ever see like we're staying gray. I think you're getting a like a supernova type event. Like everything combines into a few people and then it separates out again, and the whole thing starts over.
Yeah, and I guess I just for at this time, because like the whole thing, and maybe you guys can help me with this, because I'm struggling with it, because the whole the sequel, the original trilogy and the prequels is balance in the Force, right? And so currently in the timeline, we haven't gotten to the sequel trilogy yet. So um, Darth Vader is still out here roaming around in this timeline. He's actively hunting Kenobi. He's doing a lot of different things in the same exact timeline. And so when we come down to balance of the Force, you have Darth Vader out here wrecking, doing his thing. And then you have Grogu, who hasn't come into himself yet. And then you have other Force users who aren't on one side or the other. And so Darth Vader is sort of, if we think of a balance of the Force, he's really heavy weighted because he's determined on one particular
Right, because
path.
everything's completely out of balance right now. That's the whole point. That's what Kenobi says to Luke too. Everything's out of whack. You're supposed to write that. So that's exactly where we're supposed to be.
I mean, technically, there's 2 Jedi and 2 Sith. Palpatine and Vader and Yoda and Obi-Wan.
Right,
but balance. When balance is referred to, balance means no Sith, only Jedi. That's the balance they refer to. Not you have to have Sith right here and Jedi right here. That's not balance. Balance is all
from
Jedi.
A certain point of view, David.
No, that is George Lucas's point of view. And going back to what Miss Sunflower said,
still a
there's
point
no
of
great
view.
Jedi. Well, I mean, it's the maker. George Lucas defined that there is no such thing as a great Jedi, and Filoni is trying to. I think he's trying to stay in that whole kind of concept. But you can argue that there is kind of a gray Jedi, kind of like what Carl just said with the Bendu. The Bendu is not light or dark; he's just a Force user. So,
but he's not
the
a
answer
Jedi.
to that question really is yes, there is something that is like a gray Jedi, even though that George Lucas and Dave Filoni have stated there's no such thing. And then Freddie Prinze Jr. has also stated no such thing. Filoni told me there is no gray Jedi, but
right,
you have stuff like the
because
Bendu out there.
if it was gray, it wouldn't be a Jedi. It's a gray Force user.
Right.
Like there is the part in the middle, like the Bendu, for example. That's what he defines himself as, because when you watch that episode, they define it pretty clearly. He's like, "Are you Jedi?" No, I'm not. He laughs at that one actually, and then it goes into, "Hey, I'm the one in the middle. I'm the watcher."
So David, define for me what is Ahsoka?
She's just a Force user. She's a former Jedi.
So you're pulling it that far into semantics that it's like she's not a Jedi, so there's no gray Jedi.
Right, she says it clearly in the animation.
I know, but that's a little bit semantics, right? So it's like she was trained as a Jedi, and she's a Force user, and she didn't agree with the ways of the Jedi, even though she's
being a Jedi.
But again, that's
but look at it. Look at it from our world perspective, right? So if you go to seminary and you study to become a priest, right, and all of a sudden you develop I don't really want to be part of this religion attitude, and you leave seminary, it doesn't mean you're a Catholic priest or that you're Catholic. You can be something completely different. That's what Ahsoka does. She's been training to be a priest, Jedi being a religion. And then she decides, I don't want to be part of this. This is not me. So
yeah,
she leaves.
For sure. But I think that's what I mean by semantics. So I'm saying, so a great Jedi would be, and I think does exist because there's a few of them that we could probably mention and put into a category of saying, hey, I was with the Jedi Order. There's some things that I didn't agree with, and I have my new denomination now. And I'm saying that I'm going to be leading in this direction, and it's mostly for the good, right? So,
Now you sound like Count Dooku.
but Count Dooku also, I would consider great
You're
Jedi.
sounding like a separatist.
No, to say Jedi is off the table completely.
Of course it's not, but she's not a practicing Jedi.
Yeah, I'm just saying as
It's
far
like
as
both.
storyline
just-
Can we
goes,
just
like
call
Judaism.
Bo
Just like
as
Judaism.
a good
that
example?
we're referring to as great Jedi is never going to refer to himself as a Jedi. Because Jedi is a defined term that is part of the order, that is part of that for Star Wars world. For our terms, yeah, you can say great Jedi to define what that technically is, because it's a good definition. But for story purposes, I don't think anybody's ever going to say I'm a great Jedi.
It's 4:00 in the morning, and I think we have completely lost sight of what the hell we're talking about here.
I agree.
Really?
What is this even?
It's
we're
called
like
Star Wars stuff, Craig. We're talking about Star Wars stuff.
I thought we just got into the good Star Wars stuff.
I'm going to rein us in here for a minute. We are now halfway through this season, and I am pretty disappointed.
I will.
4 episodes into season 2, I was enjoying it more.
The last thing I'll say about this episode, and this isn't like a defense, so don't take it as me defending the episode, but I think it's pretty clear on what they want us to think is important and what we should not think is important. Who saves Grogu was never important. Choosing Ahmed Best is a clear example of that. If they would have chose Mace or somebody else, then that's someone we should expect to see in a future project, and they wanted to stay away from that. So we can let that go as a fandom. Like, that's not what's the important thing here. Grogu's trauma should play out into something else. There should be a payoff. If there's no payoff, I don't know why we're going through all this trauma stuff and all these flashbacks. Bo's arc is important, so we need to stay focused on her. Mando has not had a lot to do this season, and I think that's okay. He might have some more to do later on, but I think it's really clear what Favreau and Filoni want us to focus on, and if we get disappointed about what's not happening, or it didn't happen this way, then I think it's more on us. And again, that's not a defense. They didn't have Mace save Grogu. They didn't have anybody else do it. So I think that's them telling us that was never going to be a thing. So
Yeah, I agree. I think the whole point of what they've been doing thus far is decoupling from what came before. Yes, it's still in the same universe, but no more member berries. We're just going to tell an original story, and that is very successful. Now, unfortunately, they had to take four episodes to do that, but that's because they kind of rode that member berry train to death, and maybe kind of realized, hey, look, we need to kind of back out of this. And some of it they did rather abruptly, like taking Luke out. They did that in a show nobody even wanted to watch in the first place. Kind of odd. But they immediately backed out of that one. And now they took 4 episodes to back all the other Star Wars original storylines out. So now we're actually in a situation where they can tell a Mandalorian storyline that's only Mandalorian, not add on to whatever came before. Now they're on their own. They're free to tell whatever story they want to, and I think that's a good spot to be in. Let's see what they do with it.
My big issue with today's episode was not so much what happened, but the way it happened. And when I mean like stylistic wise, like it just didn't flow. What we talked about earlier, like it's fine if it doesn't have to be a Jedi, we know, but just it didn't feel tense when he was escaping. It just felt kind of like meh. You know what I mean? Like it just. I think they could have done a better job with the way it was done. What was done was fine, but the way that it was done, does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree to it to some extent. It's an editing issue. It didn't feel snappy. It didn't feel rushed.
But there's no reason to include Order 66 if
The
If we're not,
the trauma's going to be the thing. And if it doesn't pay off,
but we know he
then it
has
makes
trauma.
no sense.
This
Do
story did
we?
not add to Grogu's trauma. We've
No, no,
known
no. But
since he was there.
what I mean that like people go through terrible things, but does it how is it going to affect him at a certain moment in his life later
Well, yeah, we
on?
got that. I guess you're saying with her hitting the
No,
hammer and
no,
then
no.
the
I'm
sound.
saying there needs to be in the next 4 episodes a moment where something is happening and Grogu is triggered to the point that it affects the scene. And if
Yeah,
that does
yeah,
not happen,
yeah. I
then
get
we are
that.
wasting time.
But what we didn't need. So, like for example, what Chuck was saying.
Yeah.
Member berries, all these things. If like we're just telling a true Mandalorian story, you at no point did you need to tease Order 66 in the trailers. At no point did you need to bring Order 66 into it whatsoever. At no point did you need to do any of those things.
Well, you did
The
because it was
only
already in
reason,
the story. It's been in the story from the
well,
very beginning.
we
It probably
didn't,
couldn't have been, but it
we didn't
is.
have to, but we didn't have to go back to it. That's what I'm saying. So
Well, you kind of
they,
need to
they
back it out. Is my point, and that's all they did is back out of that previous flashback that they showed us. Like, look, there's no story to be told here.
No, they
so
did
we're
it. They did
gonna
it.
make
They
a
did
dead
it
end
to
out of
sell Disney Plus memberships. They did it to get people to tune in. They did it to drive up hype and speculation. That's the only
Mhm.
reason why Order 66 is involved in this whatsoever.
It didn't work because
So
they're down 25% from the previous
they
season.
they
So
they teased it in the beginning. Well, they saw the downfall coming. They teased it in the beginning. We saw it in the trailers, right? What was the biggest storyline from the trailer?
Order 66.
Yep. And then what were we waiting for the whole time?
It's to see what happened to Grogu. We
Right.
wanted, and that's what I'm saying is it was
that
underwhelming.
but that was done strategically in a way that deceived the people who are fans of the series, right? It's intentionally put in there and then it didn't pay off. That's an important thing to think about when you're looking at this. That yeah, Jar Jar Binks is actor. He got his thing. All I'm saying is Order 66, the biggest highlight moment of the trailer that was released months ago. Order 66 is what we've been talking about, actually, and what this is leading up to
And
the entire time the show's been going.
Darth Vader's coming in.
Who's going to come? Ahsoka, Luke, Vader, all these things. It's only about this scene. And they did not pay it off. And that's only going to drop these Disney Plus memberships even more because when you overpromise and underdeliver, it's a terrible thing. And you lose customers that way. I've been in sales for a long time. I cannot over deliver my customers and then not give them what I said I was going to give them.
Right, but the whole thing is the entire time they've been selling the wrong product. They've been selling bicycles, but they're actually delivering tricycles. Well, it's not the same thing, and you need to set the appropriate expectation. I agree, because all they've been doing is a bunch of fan service and forgetting about the actual storyline that they're supposed to tell. Because it's called The Mandalorian. It's not called Luke Skywalker side stories. It's not called Darth Vader, the extended universe. It's called The Mandalorian. So tell a Mandalorian storyline and take all this other stuff out because it distracts from what you're actually supposed to be telling. So
I agree.
I look at it
totally.
like I've said before. All they've been doing is backing out of these other storylines and focusing on what they're actually supposed to be telling us stories about, which is in the title. It says The Mandalorian. It doesn't say any of these other things. So
Here's
now,
the
if
thing,
people don't
though.
want to see that. That's fine. We'll see how the reaction long term is because now you got to deliver. Is my problem. Now you're going to have to actually deliver a Mandalorian storyline that's actually compelling. No, you can't. You've backed all the other things out. This is the front and center now, which I'm all for. But at the same time, I'm a little worried because is this actually going to be compelling from this point forward?
And
Because
my
all that you're
concern
doing
with
for
that,
two seasons
Carl,
is
is
temporary.
that if Din Djarin rules Mandalore, now how is he going off on adventures? He's sitting around dealing with politics, talking about the sewer system, talking about how we got to bring new trade routes here. You know what I mean? Like that's going to be boring. It's going to be boring to be tied down to Mandalore, ruling Mandalore. It's just not going to be as exciting as him traveling the galaxy as when he's a bounty hunter or things of that nature.
I agree completely. So that's what I'm saying. I want to know where they're going to go from here, because
that's why I don't think Din is going to rule.
The logical thing to do would be to put Bo-Katan into that rulership, into ruling Mandalore, and have him go off and do adventures with Grogu, and that would be again, you're back now to where the story started off. It's him as the main focus point, Grogu as an add-on, but now you can actually tell real stories about those two characters, not about, okay, this is what happened to Ahsoka in the interim. Well, I don't care about that if I'm watching The Mandalorian. That's what a so-called Ahsoka is for, is to tell me about Ahsoka. I don't want to hear these other stories where they don't belong. You know,
I just had an amazing thought. What if Din is not the Mandalorian focus of the show? What if this entire show, The Mandalorian, is actually about that little green guy?
Which it is.
That Giancarlo calls a little bastard.
I think it's actually about Bo-Katan. I think it's about Mandalore in general, because the show is not called Din Djarin. It's called The Mandalorian. So at some point, we're going to have to find out who the Mandalorian is, right?
I think it's Grogu. I think
it's Grogu.
Yeah.
I think this is just a very long story about Grogu.
It's just going to be very tough to pull that off on screen.
Honestly, I think you guys are kind of over. I think it's Din. I mean, Pedro Pascal said in an interview not that long ago, where it's like, who am I going to be playing? Oh, I'm playing the Mandalorian.
Do you think Disney is going to make Din Djarin? No, it's going to be a woman, and it's going to be, I guarantee you right now, it's going to be Bo-Katan. 100%. And Din Djarin does not want it. It is told to you the whole time. He can't even handle the sword. She's over here wielding it like crazy. She sees the mythosaur. She's over here talking to these people. She has the bloodline. It's written for you in stone who's going to be the Mandalorian. It's Bo-Katan.
Mandalore.
There's no part of Din Djarin's history you can say, oh, well, wow, he should be the rightful ruler of Mandalore. There's nothing about his history whatsoever, or his attitude, or anything he's done in the past few seasons that would make you say, boom, that's the guy. It's Bo-Katan.
Well, I think Bo-Katan will rule Mandalore, but I think Din Djarin is still the Mandalorian.
But it doesn't mean it can't be both Din and Grogu. If you look at all the titles this season.
Or Bo-Katan.
Well, or theoretically, the Mandalorian is also plural.
Right.
So if you want to be real technical about it, it could be about the entire people.
It's the entire race, yeah.
That'd be like calling it the Jedi or something, you know?
Right.
I mean, people still argue about that. What is Return of the Jedi? Is it all of the Jedi, or Return of Anakin, or is it Return, or the Jedi are coming back because of Luke? I mean,
yeah, no, but no, for sure.
It could have multiple meanings.
Din Djarin is not going to end up in that spot, I don't think.
I don't think so.
Yeah, nor should he, because that would end the show, unless they were looking to end the show. If if the final season they want to end up with him ruling Mandalore and no more stories out of these characters, you can do that. That would end the show. Because it wouldn't be interesting.
It's not as compelling.
And then think in your head, try to make it work on, like, close your eyes and try to make it work on screen of Grogu being the ruler of Mandalore. He's this tall. He can't even hold a hilt of a darksaber.
We're not talking about tomorrow.
He'll grow.
The screen. He's not going to get any bigger than Yoda. It's just not. Yoda. Grogu is not going to be the ruler of Mandalore. It's not going to work on screen.
Aside from the fact, if he were, then it'd be a little odd to have a Force using a ruler of Mandalore and not even get mentioned in anything else. So yeah, no, that wouldn't actually really truly work. So
it would be him and Tar Vizsla, right? So, and then we had Vizslas in this episode, which I thought was actually really cool. That when Bo-Katan and Din went on this journey, that a Vizsla was with them, and that a Vizsla was able to see her kind of boss it up. right? And so she's with a Vizsla. She's bossing it up. I'm telling you, it's Bo-Katan.
Well,
Disney is not going to patriarch this
that.
Mandalorian. Disney is not going to patriarch the Mandalorian. I'm telling you right now, it will be
Bo-Katan
Bo-Katan.
didn't even come until season 2, though. I mean,
Yeah. The whole ruling of Mandalore is not what the show is about.
Yeah.
This is a storyline in the show. I don't think the focus of the show is who's going to rule Mandalore.
yeah, it's not like Game of Thrones where it's about.
Are you kidding me? It's not Game of Thrones. What was this episode you just watched? Did you see them fight dragons? Did you see them get baby dragons? This last episode was an episode of the Game of Thrones.
But the point is that yes, it's like Game of Thrones, but that's not the central theme of the show. It's not centrally about
really
that.
So I'm thinking. So like we just had the House of Dragons. Did you watch the House of Dragons?
Yeah.
So what was the main characters in the House of Dragons?
Good luck telling me their names. I can't remember any of their names.
Well, it's two blonde-haired people with dragons who fight each other over who's the one who's supposed to be in charge. And now you're telling me that this show is not about that?
I'm saying
they've turned the Mandalorian. This season actually has turned into the House of Dragons. Like in this last episode, almost like fully confirms it.
But we
there's
have that Empire
about who's to rule. Like okay, so Din Djarin flat out wants her to rule. He's like, I don't want any part of this.
But you can't. The lore defeats
but
that.
they've already righted that. See, the people that said that she can't rule, or they are now on her side. They're not saying, "Hey, you're the ruler." But if she were to if they are going to do the Mythosaur, if she ends up riding the Mythosaur at the end of the show, then she's the ruler of Mandalore. Period. The end. That story is settled.
Right.
I think
and at that, I think that's also how they're going to get rid of the Darksaber. I think at that point, when she's already the ruler of Mandalore, Din can then go, "Here's your sword. Have fun with it. I don't even know how to use this thing." Because
it sounds a lot like Game of Thrones, right?
Well, no, it's nothing like Game of Thrones because this is everybody knows who the ruler is. There's no game being played. It's just
no. So like in House of the Dragon, the daughter of the king was the rightful leader. The king said, "Hey, you should be the leader." Everybody said you should be the leader, but she couldn't be the leader because of political things or other things that might happen. And so it was set up that she had to fight against the other person who the other people want. It's the same thing. And they just literally brought in dragons and baby dragons into the scenario.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't. There are a few similarities. I'll give you that, but as far as the story plot goes, there's nothing alike. There's literally nothing between these two storylines that matches up. Because you have a very clear, you have
nothing that lines up. Nothing.
No, you have a very clearly defined ruler that everybody knows is a defined ruler. Even the armorer knows that she's a defined ruler. She's like, she failed because she didn't rule properly. But she admits that she's a ruling class of Mandalore.
So why
every portion of the Mandalorians that we've been introduced to is all like, yeah, she's it. The pieces haven't fallen together for her to actually understand what she's ruling. That's what they're putting in right now. Clearly, they're going to put Bo-Katan in as the ruler of Mandalore.
But every time Din Djarin walks around, this whole episode, everybody should just be bowing and pulling a knee down to him, right? Because he bathed in the waters. He has the Darksaber. So until
but this group of people doesn't care about the Darksaber. They've established this in the storyline. They've flat out said we don't care about who holds the Darksaber. That doesn't establish rule for the people that were around. They don't care about that. They care about the way. Bo-Katan has now adopted the way, at least so far. So they care about that. Because the definition has been she failed because she didn't follow the way. Yeah, she had a fancy sword, but we don't give a crap about the fancy sword. We care about the way. So now they've introduced Bo-Katan into the way. The other people that are floating around, they care about the sword. So that's why she's eventually going to get the sword back. So and we already know that that's going to happen because Din doesn't even want it. I mean, he flat out, hey, you can have it. I don't care. Useless to me. I mean, he doesn't use it ever. So clearly he doesn't want it. And clearly they don't want him to use it. Otherwise, they would have already introduced training, say, montage number 5 to show him practicing with it. And he doesn't. Even after he got explained how it's supposed to work, he doesn't. Because they explained the whole why he's so slow with the blade and all that stuff. And he doesn't apply any of that stuff that he knows about. So clearly he doesn't care about the sword. He's just holding on to it for time being until he can hand it off to Bo-Katan.
I think the show would get stale real quick if Din takes over Mandalore for any extended time.
The only way that you could do that is if you were planning to end the show. If
but
that's
Miss
your final
Sunflower,
shot of the finals,
Miss Sunflower had a good point here. She was saying, if there's a game for the Mandalore throne, it's being played one-sided. Only Bo is playing that game. Din is not interested. But again, Din isn't interested. We know Din doesn't care. Did you get any sense from this episode or any other episodes that the Vizsla might care?
Yeah, well, not from this episode, but in Book of Boba Fett, yeah.
There's other Mandalorians, and he is Tar Vizsla. He's a direct descendant of Tar Vizsla.
That's the reason.
There's other Mandalorians that care, even though Din doesn't.
Right now, I understand that.
So it's still a Game of Thrones.
Kind of the point of Bo-Katan saving his kid. I think that the whole submission part that was the whole point of this episode, is to show that the Vizsla is like, hey, look, you're the leader of the party. I respect you for that. So if you continue to be the leader, I will fall in line underneath that. That was kind of the whole point of that scene. Otherwise, why put that in?
Maybe sometimes people say things and they don't always mean them.
Yeah, but then after that, they save it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want them to turn this into Game of Thrones, you can certainly do it. But at this current point in time, it's just not Game of Thrones.
I don't think Vizsla is just going to let it go. At the beginning, when Din Djarin came back, he said he was standing at the beginning of the cave and was like, hey, you're not really a part of this anymore. He's been sort of a part of this. And while he does respect the way, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have personal animosity behind.
And he might challenge at some point, sure. And but storyline wise, I think we all know that he's going to fail because he's failed at everything else. He's a good support character, but he's already shown that he's not a leader in any way. So why would you? That's not something you're going to pursue as a storyteller. You've already established this is not a leader. He's big, he's strong. He's got the biggest gun in the game, but other than that, that's all he got.
I think the most interesting thing that happened in this episode is actually the armorer sort of being very passive with Bo telling her that she saw a real life mythosaur. Like, I think that speaks volumes. And I don't know what Bo does with someone finally her revealing to someone what happened and then being very passe about the whole thing.
She almost treated it like it was a vision.
Right. It's almost like a little kid telling an adult, I just saw a ghost. And you're like, okay, you saw the ghost. Okay.
I think that's the most interesting thing about this. And still in the back of our minds, we know that this Empire officer is out here doing nefarious things. Someone's trying to kill Bo. And Giancarlo told me that he's going to be in this season. So there's 3 things I'm waiting for that to me are more interesting than who's going to lead Mandalore, because I know there's threats out here and we need to see them like now because there's only 4 episodes left.
Right, and I wouldn't be surprised if the next episode focuses more on the Empire remnant and them reforming, because now you have you've introduced that in the last episode that there is still characters that have a clear plan. And I think we're going to get back to that, and we're probably going to see Gideon in this next episode and kind of recombine those characters and kind of give us an idea of what's happening behind the scenes. Kind of hey, these guys need to go because they beat me once before; they're not going to beat me again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I think that's where we're going with that. Hopefully.
And we just got cloning, right? So in the last episode, we just got cloning. And so we know how that leads into the sequel trilogy, right? So Moff has to kind of come in at this point if Palpatine is really pulling the strings like we know him to be during this time. And I would very much expect like at least a full episode kind of dedicated, like you said, Chuck, where the Empire is now and kind of how we're heading towards the First Order. Because we're in this period and Palpatine is pulling strings. We know that. We know that cloning is a very big part of this, right? And we just had a last episode that went an hour, the longest episode of the whole series, only talking about cloning, basically, or the doctor who was a part of it.
Right.
I'm taking full credit for the First Order bit, by the way, because I was talking First Order back in season 1. Nobody else was. So I got receipts. I got receipts.
Well, Ted, they already they actually said it in a magazine, so we already know that's going to lead up to the First Order.
No,
So,
but
yeah,
I
it's-
said it like 4 years ago.
Well, it's also just
I-
the timeline, so we
Said
know
it
that that's
before
where
they
it's going.
even announced the show, Ted. So
I said it
It
it was
before.
impressive.
Once you had the
Look,
sequel
Boba
trilogy
Fett
and then the
Silver.
Mandalorian series before the sequel trilogy, we knew it was leading up to the First Order.
Nobody knew that. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody knew it. Nobody thought we're gonna get Jedi in this thing. All I mean to say is that I said it before. Favreau and Filoni righting the wrongs of the Star Wars universe. Everybody who criticized and dogged the sequel trilogy, this is their way of building towards the First Order because nobody bought that there was this faction out in the universe that could overtake the Republic in one fell swoop and not get
All of a
noticed.
sudden, you have a planet that can destroy other planets. Like it's not just a Death Star anymore; it's an entire planet. And like we advanced that far while there's Republic rule, and nobody know. I mean, that's just wild.
Now we're
to
getting
think.
into the sequel trilogy. This is where I bid adieu. I'm going to bed. You guys can argue about the sequel trilogy all night long.
Oh no, we're not arguing about it. We're just letting you know that
I'm kidding, but you
that's
know
the whole point. Yeah.
it was good chatting with you guys. Again, I just wrap up by saying 7-ish out of 10 for me. I was a little underwhelmed, but what are you
All
going
right.
to do? Hopefully next week we'll be crying and jumping for joy.
maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Craig.
Have a good night, guys.
Till next Wednesday.
Bye.
Peace.
Good night.
He's just in his underwear. We did not.
He was?
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I wasn't actually looking down there. So
You turn it vertical, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh wait."
So yeah, here's a future, totally specked out Grogu.
I dig it.
It's like a little tank. Here's another rendition. Just a single
Yeah,
pauldron.
see, they're not going to be able to sell toys with, like, he can't be in a helmet, especially if he's in a faction where you can only keep your helmet on, because the whole franchise is based on him being cute and not having a helmet on. Like, you're not going to be able
There's
to, like,
ways
leave.
around it. Like tonight when Bo-Katan took her helmet off. I mean, there's ways around it. So
Yeah, I mean, there's ways around it for one, but also, like in his case, since the ears do part of the talking, I'm pretty sure his helmet is not going to be included covering the ears. His ears are going to be
Yeah.
sticking out. So
Yeah.
therefore, he can still emote through the helmet by ears going left, right, up, down, yada yada yada. So that'll be an easy way around it because this character gestures a lot more than he currently doesn't talk at all. So another thing they're going to have to fix eventually. If they
To
want
me,
to
it's the eyes. It's his eyes.
Right, but
Because-
the eyes you can manipulate by doing head nods. I mean, the Japanese have been doing that on TV shows for forever and a day. To head tilts, head nods, you can talk that way. If you add the ear movement that this character is known for, then he's emoting just the same with a helmet on. So
By the time he's able to wear a helmet, he's going to be a stone cold killer, and those eyes are going to be dead. So it's
Right.
not going to matter. It's not going to matter.
He's not
well,
gonna
I mean,
wear-
for one, before he gets a helmet, he has to talk anyways. They said that in this episode. So
Yeah,
he,
yeah.
you know, So we know that either this season they're going to make him talk so that he can take the oath, or we're saving that for another season. So
He's got 20 years. They're not going to put a helmet on Grogu.
Yeah, I don't
I
think
mean,
they'll put a helmet on
that's the thing.
Grogu
They
anytime.
pretty much said they're not going to do that. So
Yeah, they're not going to do it.
Or
Yeah,
they
unless
just
Din
do a time
leaves.
jump.
Well, he's just like, hey, I'm way more powerful than all you guys, so just chill out on me, and y'all wear your helmets, and I'm just going to be here hanging out. You know, but he might have other ventures, other journeys. He might have other things to do. He might
He'll
have to
be a
go.
gray Mandalorian.
Well, he might have to go help Ahsoka. He might have to go help Cal Kestis. He might have to go help other people. He might have other ventures to go
Yes.
on. You know,
I really think that the way the Children of the Watch, it's gonna dissolve once they bring in the other Mandos that are out there that melted away Bo's forces.
especially if it's Boca who's on top, right?
Right. And yeah. I mean that would make sense, but yeah, for a storytelling point of view, yeah.
And for
Din
actors,
really can't
how much are they paying Pedro Pascal just to do the voice?
Probably a
Like, at
lot,
some
but I
point,
mean they could
Not
still
enough.
work it into
Not
where
at
he
some
just
point
doesn't
they're
take
going
the
to want
helmet
to
off.
pull the helmet off, and they're going to want to have their actors on screen.
Right, which is what they've done before, and they
And
can
what-
change
and
the
like a
religion,
scene.
and Din can still be like, I still like the helmet. I like the actual helmet. They can still have Brendan Wayne and Lateef Crowder do the majority of the acting, and then Pedro Pascal just emails in his voice. So
I disagree. I think Pedro Pascal has to be in the suit every scene, every time. If you're going to take credit for the role, you got to be in the suit. Come on,
Well.
Pedro. You're from San Antonio.
he's from a lot
By
of
way
places.
of Chile, yeah.
Chile.
Yeah, but he was from San Antonio, right? Can we get him on the show?
I'll work on it.
I've tried asking everyone
He's a
that
San
I've met.
Antonio boy.
Yeah. We have a lot
Maybe
of
we
San
gotta
Antonians here.
just give him a puffy taco and see if it.
Hey, everyone here on this podcast has lived in San Antonio at one point.
Yes,
Very
it's
nice.
true.
Yeah. So
Just
Very
give him
And
a
with
taco and
that-
a flour tortilla.
he was asked at South by Southwest who has a better tacos, Austin or San Antonio, and he said San Antonio, and he didn't even really
100%.
hesitate. Yeah, for sure.
100%.
yeah, he's also commented on California versus Texas on the Mexican food side, and he
Yeah.
fully said Texas on that one.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that though.
hey, maybe we can bait him with a taco. We set up a trap with a taco in it from San Antonio, clearly labeled as being from San Antonio, and we
It's
can
It's
catch
got to
him
be a
that way.
good one. It's got to be like, hey, we got some takeout from Henry's Puffy Tacos, and he'll be here in a second.
Well, yeah, it's possible. Anyways, yeah.
You guys have
All
no
right.
idea what Henry's is. All right.
I know
with
Henry's
that-
puppies.
And with that, that is our Mando React post show. Thank you everyone for joining us. The 3 people that are left watching us on YouTube. For Chuck J, Ted, Maddie B, my name's David. May the force be with you. Always. This is the way.